We all try to adopt new habits that will potentially improve our health, but when are these habits driving us back? And can we do something to optimize them? In this video, I'm going to tell you 5 habits we think are healthy, but are actually compromising our health, and what we can do to make them work for us. Welcome to the 3rd episode of Your Health Decoded. I'm Rosa. I'm a biomedical scientist from King's College London. I'm a Mayo Clinic trained health coach, and I specialize in metabolic health through the European Institute of Metabolomic Medicine. I'm also the chief scientist at Kima Health, where we help people optimize their health using lifestyle and nutrition. So which are the habits that we think are healthy but are actually compromising our health? The first one is exercise. Exercise is undoubtedly one of the best interventions one can do to improve their health. But when can this work against us? So more often than not, we see people that are over-exercising. And we have to look at why this is so important and why we need to prevent it. One of the ways that we can define exercise is when we make our body put more effort, more physical effort than it would usually do. And after that, after we finish our workout, what happens is that the body tries to adapt to the stress that it has undergone. So it tries to restructure the tissues, the circulatory system. It tries to build more muscle. It reorganizes the bone. So most of the benefits of exercise actually come during the recovery phase. When we over-exercise is when we don't allow our body enough time to be in the recovery phase, and when we don't give it enough nutrients through our nutrition to actually be able to recover. I actually had a client from Kima that came to me because she had sleep disturbances. And we were trying to brainstorm and figure out ways of why this could be happening, because her nutrition was optimal, she was exercising, she was taking her supplements. So we couldn't really unlock why she couldn't sleep very well. And I introduced to her the concept of, do you think you might be over-exercising? And at first she told me, no, I'm really not pushing myself. I don't think I'm pushing myself. But after a while, and after we explored it, she said, well, now that I think about it, when I don't wake up early to exercise, when I don't wake up super early for my HIIT class, I actually sleep like a baby. So this is a classic example that we can see that over-exercising was causing her to be more hyperactive. And there are other instances of why our body is overworking when we're over-exercising, and we want to avoid that. So the key takeaway here is to exercise. For most people, for the average person, intense exercise at around 2, maximum 3 times a week is good. And then some sort of movement on the other days. This can be walking. It's different for everyone depending on your level of skill and on the level of exercise that you normally do. But some sort of movement during the other days when you don't have intense exercise is the best way to go. So remember, over-exercising can have negative effects towards our health, but optimizing our exercise schedule can be extremely beneficial and help us improve our overall well-being. The second habit is drinking water. Yes, drinking water can actually become a problem. What needs to happen is that we need to have a balance between how much water we drink and how many electrolytes we get. Electrolytes as in salt. So many people try to increase their water intake, but fail to increase their salt intake. And this causes our body to have an imbalance and a lack of electrolytes, which can manifest as even symptoms of dehydration. We can have headaches, we can have tiredness, and a generalized feeling of fatigue. So the optimal way is, yes, to increase our water intake, especially during the summertime when we lose more water through sweat. At the same time, to receive sufficient electrolytes through salt. Of course, we are talking about unrefined sea salt or Himalayan salt, because if we look at how many electrolytes and how many elements unrefined sea salt has, it has 92, more than 92 elements. But if we compare that to refined sea salt only has sodium, chloride, and iodine, which is sometimes added afterwards. So we need to opt for unrefined sea salt or Himalayan salt in order to replenish the amount of electrolytes we're getting and ensure that we are not only drinking water. During the summer, the best way to get those electrolytes is through a Greek salad, because fruits and vegetables are also rich in electrolytes like potassium, and we also can put these sea salt on top and make it the perfect way to get our electrolytes. The third habit is sun exposure. So many people think that we should avoid the sun and that we need to be constantly wearing sunscreen even when we go out in the city during the winter, or if we go out in our balcony, that we need to put glasses, hat, and sunscreen. Why is this a problem, and how can we adapt this habit in order to make it beneficial for our health? So what we need to do, first of all, is of course avoid any sunburn, because this increases the chances of developing skin cancer, and it can also age our skin. On the other hand, however, it's also not good to avoid the sun during the winter and then being suddenly exposed to it during summer months when you will go to your vacation. This makes the skin not prepared to accept this level of radiation and causes damage to the skin. So what we should do is that we want to gradually expose ourselves to the sun during the winter as well. So for example, going out in the balcony in the morning to get some sunlight without having any sunscreen on. We want to aim for around 1 to 2 hours of exposure to the sun daily. And this will also depend on the skin tone of each person. Sun is not only good for our vitamin D levels, but it also plays a very important role in the energy levels that we have. This is because the sun not only has UV radiation, but it also has a type of radiation that can pass through the clouds, it can pass through our clothes even and reach the skin. And this is infrared radiation. So this can actually boost the tiny batteries that we have inside our cells that produce energy, which are called mitochondria. So sun exposure has a central role in the energy production through the infrared radiation, and it's important to try to get consistent exposure to sun throughout the year. Of course, not risking damage to the skin and not risking a sunburn. And a good way to tell that is we want to reach the skin to a point where it has gained a little bit of a red color, a redness, and a level of warmth. And this is then the sign that we need to seek some coverage, put on sunscreen, a hat, or go in the shade and stop being exposed to the sunlight. So the key takeaway here is get exposed to sun throughout the year in safe ways for around 1 to 2 hours, depending on your skin tone. The third habit we're going to talk about is stress management techniques like yoga or meditation. So these techniques can be very beneficial because they help us plan our future. They help us manifest, if you want to call it. And this method is very useful because planning ahead in life can give you a better chance in achieving the goals that you want. So the goals that you achieve largely depend on the amount of planning that you do. So engaging in these types of activities like meditation or yoga, they put us in a state of planning and positive mindset, can be good for our health. However, there also needs to be a balance between how much focus we put internally and how much focus we put in the external environment. Because it's a fact that we spend a lot of time thinking, we spend a lot of time in our computers, our laptops, and in front of screens, or even writing for our work. So we need to have a balance. And this is important because it helps us regulate our nervous system and helps us regulate our stress levels. So we're not aiming for complete introversion, where that would be by being indoors all day and doing meditation or yoga. So activities like going outdoors, walking, being in contact with nature can also help improve our health and help improve our stress levels. So the key takeaway from here is, yes, we can engage in activities like yoga and meditation, but at the same time ensure that we compensate for the time we spend indoors and the time we spend thinking by also spending time outdoors and doing activities that make us more extroverted. So the fifth habit is the consumption of fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are part of a healthy and balanced diet, as they're rich in minerals, in antioxidants, and in vitamins. However, there are two issues that we need to be aware of in order to make them not have negative effects towards our health. One main concern we have around fruits and vegetables is their content in pesticides. Pesticides are used to repel insects, as we all know, and they can have negative effects towards our hormonal health. They destroy our microbiome, and they can also accumulate inside our body. So it's important to opt for organic produce when possible. Another way to minimize the content in pesticides of fruits and vegetables is to soak them in vinegar and water for around 15 minutes. The second concern we have with fruits and vegetables is that consuming large quantities exposes us to oxalates. Oxalates are a type of antinutrient found in fruits and vegetables that has negative effects towards our health. It can accumulate in our joints, can make us have kidney stones, and it can also destroy our blood vessels. So the key takeaways from here are to consume fruits and vegetables in moderation and also to opt for organic ones. The best approach is to opt for seasonal fruits and fruits that are not too sweet as well, because over-consuming fruits can also spike our blood glucose and have negative metabolic effects. So by consuming whole fruits that are in season and not too sweet, we can protect ourselves from having negative metabolic effects from the fruit. A bonus habit, which is related to the fruits and vegetables we talked about, is drinking fruit smoothies or fruit juices. Generally, this is not the best approach, as we don't really want to drink our calories. This is because when we drink our calories, it reduces the feeling of satiety, the feeling of being full, of not being hungry. So we consume large amounts of calories and we still don't feel full. Another issue with fruit smoothies is that because they are blended and because they contain large amounts of fruits, they can spike our blood glucose much faster than a whole fruit would. So take, for example, an orange juice. If you consume whole oranges, you would eat around 1-2 oranges and then you would be full. But if you want to make a glass of orange juice, you require at least 2 to 3 and even 4 oranges in order to create this. And the juice contains, quote unquote, the worst parts of the fruit, which is simply the water with the sugar, the fructose. Whereas on the other hand, if you consume the whole fruit, you get access to the fiber, which can have beneficial effects over your health. So the key takeaway here is to not prioritize smoothies, but instead eat whole fruits and vegetables that are in season. And the quick note here is that for most people, bananas on a daily basis are not the best fruit. This is because they contain 35 grams in total of carbohydrates. This can be in the form of fructose as well as starch. But there is an exception for athletes and people that exercise a lot because they can be a good source of energy for them. But for the general population that has moderate levels of exercise, bananas are not the best approach. Okay, so let's look at everything we talked about together. We talked about exercise and that going for 2 times per week of intense exercise and then some sort of movement throughout the week is the best approach, like walking, yoga, or Pilates, something lower impact. Then we talked about water and electrolyte balance. So we want to ensure that we are taking enough water, but at the same time we are eating enough salt through unrefined sea salt or Himalayan salt. Then we talk about the importance that sun exposure has and that we need to gradually expose ourselves to sunlight throughout the year instead of just doing it in one go in the summer, because it can lead to sunburns. And at the same time, sun helps us have vitamin D. It also helps us produce energy through our mitochondria from the benefits of infrared radiation. We looked at the importance of having a balance between any yoga or meditation and at the same time going outdoors or doing activities that cause extroversion, like walking in the woods or walking at a local park or engaging in some sort of activity that puts our attention to the external environment. And finally, we talked about fruits and vegetables, that we need to consume them in moderation. They are part of a healthy diet, but we need to ensure that they are organic and that we don't over-consume them. And at the same time, in terms of fruits, we want to avoid putting them in juices or in smoothies. And we want to go for whole fruits that are in season and the ones that are less sweet to prevent having the negative metabolic effects from high levels of fructose. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any more of our videos, and see you in the next one.